Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
So again, today we have entrepreneurs, the shrimp tank where book smarts and street smarts collide. We have an amazing entrepreneur today. Happens to be a childhood friend of mine that I've been very close with since high school days. She has had an amazing career in the real estate market. We're going to bring her on in just a second. I would like to remind all our listeners that you could follow this show, all 13 cities, by hitting that subscription button, the follow button. We are nationally syndicated through iHeart, Google Stitch, SoundCloud, basically anywhere that you can get your cast, you can get this show and all the shows across the country. And this topic today, I'm going to bring on Christine Rocha, a childhood friend. She is an amazing entrepreneur in the real estate market. It's, in my opinion, a really topical event just because everybody's looking at their real estate values. How do they buy a house in this environment with mortgage rates at close to 7% right now, almost like the 70s and the 80s. And there's a lot of moving parts. But with Christine, being an entrepreneur, it's not just about trying to maximize the value of your home, it's trying to build a business at the same time. And she's been really successful being able to do that. So, Christine, it's awesome to see you and welcome to the Shrimp Tank.
Thank you, Mark. So nice to be here.
So let's just kind of go into kind of the arc of what your career is. I know that you are in a very competitive marketplace in the town that we grew up in, Melrose, but you're also in many communities. And Melrose is a unique situation just because there's not a lot of inventory. You have people that may think their houses are worth more or less than they are, and you're really competing really heavily as an entrepreneur because there's so many real estate agents that love that market. So let's maybe start with Melrose, for example. Like, why is it such a dynamic place, and what's complex about it?
Absolutely. Well, Melrose itself, as you know, is such a unique blend of urban and suburban. We have a great proximity to Boston. We have public transportation. So we have the commuter rail and we have the MBTA. But we're also super close to Route 1, 93, 128, 95. So we're in a really sweet spot as far as that's concerned. Our town, beautiful older homes, so full of character and charm that so many people are looking for now. Our parks, our parks are busy, they're fun. We have great coffee shops. We have a vibrant downtown, amazing restaurants. But then we also have the Fells, where biking and hiking and walking and dog parks and golf courses. So I really feel we're a city, but we have such a small hometown feel that I think it just draws in a lot of people.
I would agree. And it's been crazy the past couple of years with COVID and all that. And you being an entrepreneur, being at the top of the food chain in terms of at least Melrose and all the communities and all that. What's the biggest obstacle, like in an environment like this, that you're facing when there's not a lot of inventory and either the buyer or the seller, they're just not in line? Like how do you deal with some of the obstacles that you're seeing right now?
Sure. Really comes down to education. It's really educating the clients. It's letting people know that, the market is still the market. It's still moving forward. People are concerned about inflation. People are concerned about the higher interest rates, but it's having those conversations over and over again. You mentioned in the beginning, 30-year fix right now is, just a little bit above 7%, but there's a 10-year arm that's still at 5.25%. So there are ways around the higher interest rates that we're seeing right now. And historically, they're still super low. My parents talk about when they bought their last house, 18% interest rate. Granted, house prices were a lot lower at that time. But so if you put it into perspective, we're still in we're in such a sweet spot right now, I believe, where things have changed over the last few months as we all have felt it and seen it. But it's still a seller's market, especially in a lot of the towns that we work in. It's still a seller's market. If you price your home correctly based on location and condition and size, you are still going to draw in a lot of buyers. And it comes down to supply and demand. There are just still many buyers out there that are looking to buy. So sellers are still in a really nice spot. Things may have slowed down a little bit when it comes to the volume of multiple offers, but they're still seeing multiple offers. They might get 2 or 3 versus, 5, 6, 7, 8 multiple offers. And, they're still seeing sometimes a little bump in list price. So meaning, instead of maybe $100,000 or $200,000 over offer, price, they're seeing maybe $20,000 over, but it's still, so it's still a really good seller's market. And I think buyers now are getting another opportunity, meaning, okay, interest rates, are something to take into consideration, but not all houses are going under agreement within the first weekend. So it's allowing buyers to breathe a little bit, to take a second to figure out the house that, potentially they'd like to make an offer. And when they make the offer, contingencies are coming back, which is huge as well. So home inspections, we can still, we're back to putting in home inspections again as a traditional offer, would look like. So overall, I'd say it's really just about getting the word out, letting people know that it's not as bad as it seems on the news, and educating buyers and sellers to know that this is a good time to move forward with whatever plans you had to that you were planning on doing.
Yeah. And for our viewers, it's a good thing they are a tandem couple. My other good friend, her husband is a home inspector, and that's a unique skill set that they bring together for their clients, because he's in a situation where he's seeing the houses and they compare notes, and it's a good tag team in that regard. Let's focus on some kind of best practices from the seller's perspective. Like what, someone wants to buy a new house or change. What are some of the things that a buyer should be doing before they get to that point of making an offer or getting their ducks in a line, if you will?
So I will say this, as far as the buyer is concerned, I think they always need to be working with a buyer's agent, because that's the person who really understands the market and they're working in that market day in and day out. So a full-time buyer's agent is what a buyer should look for first. And then the buyer's agent's going to come to the table with a team of people. And it's up to the buyer at that point whether they would like to use those people or use people that they have been also referred to. But I think that's the first thing, that it's getting together with a buyer's agent and becoming educated on the process. There is a lot that goes into buying a home, and you definitely want to address it in the right manner, in the right steps, meaning before you go out looking, casually, of course, can be, but before you really go out and start searching for a home, you want to be pre-approved for a mortgage. So you do want to know financially what you're able to do. And that way you're not disappointed when you go out and you start looking for homes. So I'd say from a buyer's standpoint, you definitely want to, people will come to me and they'll have a whole idea of
A wish list, if you will.
a wish list. I'm sorry. Yes, a wish list.
Yeah.
And we take that, we listen to it, we see what we want, what they want to do, but then we start to narrow it down. So it's super important that they go out and look at houses, we view houses together, and really get to a point where they've narrowed down what they want. And then when it comes on the market, they move forward. And when we do that, there are all kinds of strategies that we use and that we encourage, buyers to take advantage of. And,
So yeah.
it's just
what I'm hearing is start kind of drill it down to get the focus. So they might come into you and have realistic, or not, I would say more just kind of like all over the place. But what you do is you try to help them narrow down very
narrow it down.
specifically. Right.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
So what I heard is the pre-approval is really important. Obviously, if you're a cash buyer, that's sometimes more attractive on the buy side, because a seller will weigh offers based on what the financing package looks like. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct. Yes.
So if you did have the ability to, you're transitioning, are you gonna be able to get a better deal if you're a cash buyer versus a mortgage finance person?
I'll say that depends too. It really does. Things have been so competitive over the last couple of years. If you are competitive as far as your other contingencies as well. So if you're a cash buyer, but you are, maybe not making as strong of an offer as a buyer with a mortgage, then it depends what the buyer with the mortgage is offering, as far as different contingencies, potentially waiving appraisals. There's just so much that goes into it that I don't want to say, yes, I mean, to come forward with a cash offer is fantastic, but I think it depends. It just depends who your other competition.
And the total deal. Yeah. So it's
Total
all the variables that come into play. And that's where the negotiation and a buyer's agent is going to be able to put the best foot forward for why the offer is a compelling offer.
Absolutely.
Got it. Let's change the sides now. We're a seller, and there's a lot of people out there. I'm in finance, is my day job. But we hear things, and I hear questions from clients all the time that they're going to sell their house and they're being told different things. And maybe we can talk about your experience in this regard. But sometimes people will hear, if I redo my kitchen or I redo my bathroom, I will get more for my house. But unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't correlate. Like if you spend $50,000 on a kitchen, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that true value back on the sale price. So what are some of the things as a buyer, they're getting ready, you're going to work with them and they want to hire you as a listing agent and
Sure.
hopefully get a double bubble, right? But what do people do? Because I get this question all the time in finance. Like they want to sell their house and sometimes they just don't, they don't want to go through a renovation project. They don't want to spend the money, but some of that just doesn't come back. And so what are some of the things that are a waste of money or really just the best things to do when they're ready to list their house?
Absolutely. So I think when you're thinking about listing your house, really you're creating a product now for the market. So the first thing you want to do is really look at your house now from the eyes of a buyer who's coming in. And that really starts from the outside. You want to make sure that curb appeal, because as soon as your house goes on the market, buyers are driving by. So you want to make sure that your curb appeal is attractive, that, as simply as cutting your lawn, raking your leaves, trimming your bushes, flowers, a wreath on the door. You really want to set a pretty stage for your house when you go on the market. Then you come in and you want to make sure, first and foremost, always decluttering. Decluttering is so important when you're going on the market. I always tell my clients that if you don't plan on taking something with you to your next house, it shouldn't really be there when we put your house on the market. So that's first and foremost. And then depending how far people want to go, paint. Painting is something we can all do. It's pretty inexpensive. So if it's something that you're inclined to do, nice, neutral, fresh colors is always important. So, people are still loving the grays and the whites. So if you have the time, and that's what we say too, you should always, if you can, sometimes, people need to sell in a hurry and that's fine too. But if it's something planning and something you're thinking about, then, take some steps to put your house in the best light possible. You mentioned renovations, you mentioned kitchens and baths always sell. They help a house sell for sure, but rarely do I ever suggest that you take on such a major renovation when you're trying to sell your house. I think you should really focus in more on the small repairs, things that, you've may have learned to live with over time, things that, I meant to get to that and you haven't. So I would say I would invest more of my time in a handyman and having them come in and really kind of get the house in tip-top shape in that respect, than I would in putting in a full renovation, because your buyer may come in and you may have done a beautiful renovation, but it may not be to their taste.
Right.
So again, when you talk about not getting the best return for your dollar, I also think, and I think about, the houses in our area here, and as we mentioned, kind of older, beautiful homes, but a lot of times you'll walk in and there'll be carpet all over the floor, as an example, or wallpaper on the walls. And those are things sometimes that will turn people off, but it's so easy to pull up the carpet. And if there are beautiful hardwood floors under there, that really sells a property as well. So it just depends how far you want to take it, as far as, dressing your house basically to put it on the market. So those are the kind of conversations I'd have with people. I'd want to see how motivated they are, how much time they have. Do they want to stage? Staging is another, and staging can come in different levels. If you're moving out of your house before you put it on the market, then staging a vacant home is really a smart idea. It's not a decorating decision, it's a business decision. And statistically, it shows that staged homes sell quicker and for more money than a home that's not. If you're living in your home, staging can still be an alternative, just working around the pieces that are already there. So those are
Right.
some suggestions, certainly not
No,
big.
those are great. Yeah, yeah, and I heard too. I have a retired real estate agent as an uncle, and he explained that you try to take family pictures because the buyer is kind of walking through, envisioning where they're putting their couch, where how where their stuff's going, and the decluttering clearly helps that. But they get a little uncomfortable when they see like a lot of personal stuff hanging around in the house, like family pictures, for example. But that's the vantage point that they try to create is that buyer envisioning, themselves living there and where their stuff goes. Is that true, do you think?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. A lot of times we'll walk in and there'll be pictures of, the weddings and, babies and distractions, basically. So yes, any kind of personal items like that, we always ask them to, take them down, start packing, right? There's a lot to pack. So start packing some of those personal items. And when we talk about decluttering, when we talk about staging, really, surfaces, especially maybe one or two items, you really don't want more than that. You don't want things that are going to take away from the being of the house, the structure of the house.
Mm.
So versus you're decorating, you really want them to be looking at the rooms and again, like you said, and your retired uncle, envisioning themselves living there.
Mhm. So so for the viewers here, you can obviously tell I'm clearly biased with Christine, but you can tell that she's a calm, caring, educated professional. And I think obviously that's one of the reasons that she's so successful is she's really a very good listener, which I think a lot of women are. But let's transition now because the show is where book smarts and street smarts collide. And you are an entrepreneur because, obviously, if you get to the dance, you're going to do a great job. But you also have built a really impressive business and you're an entrepreneur and you're having to market yourself. And, people come to you and I think you have probably one of the highest referral rates of anybody in the area, just repeat customers, which is a huge testament to the quality of work that you do. But let's talk about you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. What are some of the things that you work on as an entrepreneur, and maybe some of the things that you're not good at or like to be better at?
So yes, we wear many hats as small business owners know. So everything from the business that you're in, so constantly trying to keep up to date with what's going on in the industry, what's going on in real estate. Where are we moving to? Where are we going? Totally always listening to the economists and podcasts and whatnot. So there's a part of the business that's just keeping up with the business. And then there's another part of the business that's growing the business, that is working with the clients. I have been very lucky in my business where the majority of my clients come from either repeat clients or referrals, and for that I am so grateful. But it's so when I think about marketing, I market to them. I get a pulse of what's important to them, and I continuously keep in touch as far as that goes. So I think consistency is important when it comes to continuing to build your business, and I do that, a variety of different ways, as a lot of entrepreneurs do. So and then there's the whole other part of the business, the just the accounting part of the business, the running of the business. I will say that I have learned how to do that part of the business. So the part
Yeah.
I love is the real estate part. The part I have learned to do is the finance part, that piece of it. So, we were very fortunate when we started Residential Realty Group in 2016. We started it as a virtual real estate company. So we do not have a storefront. That is something I never wanted to have. I didn't want that responsibility. I didn't feel it was needed. So we took a different
And the overhead too, that's related to that too, right?
absolutely.
Hmm.
Everything
Yeah.
is automated. We have automated everything, as you would find, in any brick and mortar type of brokerage as well. But
Hmm.
we found really we like to customize, we like to personalize. And in doing that, we found that our sellers didn't want to come into the office. They wanted us to come to their homes. Our buyers, they didn't want to come into the office. They wanted to meet, in the locations that they're looking to buy in. So we meet at fun coffee shops. It's things like that. So I've learned what I like to do, what I, would prefer not to do. And I've been able, thankfully, to work around all of that. So it's been wonderful, and we're still growing. I mean, it's still a learning process every day. But I
Yeah.
feel like we're
Yeah.
really solid. We're in really, a good position right now. Our clients are wonderful, and yeah, just moving forward.
Mm. Let's talk about, one of the things in my world that I hear a lot about is, I think in the next 10 years, there's something like $10 trillion from, the boomers, if you will, that are transitioning to um, either assisted living or retirement communities. But in a town like Melrose, where, there's a lot of older houses, there's a little bit older population. Do you see in the next 5 to 10 years like a major shift with people, getting out of like bigger houses um, and transitioning that money to their kids or their kids coming in? But I do think in the next 5 to 10 years, the largest transfer of wealth is happening, and for most people, the biggest part of their net worth is their house. So do you see some different dynamics in your field coming in the next few years?
So I do, and it's great that you brought that up as far as a question. So with real estate agents, we can earn different designations by attending different classes, and I do have what's called a senior real estate specialist designation. And what that basically means is additional coursework as far as working with people who might be going through the exact same transition that you're talking about. And
Hmm.
it's something that I was always interested in, and started, I'll say before COVID, because everything's kind of a pre-COVID and a post-COVID. And we
Hmm.
were starting to get out and really meet with people at the senior centers and whatnot, talking about what this transition might look like for people, and kind of starting to help them through it. And then we had to slow down a little bit. Zoom just isn't, something that we can really have those kind of conversations on. But just 3 weeks ago in September, we had a great discussion at the Milano Center in Melrose. It's a senior center, and it was called Moving On. And what it was is feeling less overwhelmed and more in control of your living situation. And the things we really wanted to cover and talk about with people were just the steps it takes to get somebody to that decision to actually want to move on to a new place of living. So we talked about the emotional part of it. We talked about involving family. We talked about the financial and legal considerations when it comes to this type of move, and we talked a lot about housing options. Part of what we're trying to do is really educate people on their options. And again, like anything, if you have the time to prepare, these are the steps that you should really be taking in order to have a smooth transition. Not everyone has that option, but when they do, it makes a huge difference. So we're trying to get the word out as far as that is concerned. These are the steps, and this is what you can expect if you take those steps. Now, from that discussion, it was really interesting, and we knew that this was the case as well. A lot of people want to age in place. A lot of people don't want to sell their houses right now. They like where they live, they like their community, and they're just not quite ready for that move yet. So although some people got a lot of benefit out of it, we talked a lot about assisted living, as you had mentioned. We talked a lot about the idea of moving in with family and whatnot, and what that would look like for them. The question that came up over and over was about reverse mortgages. So
Yeah.
people wanted to know how they could use a reverse mortgage. So as a result, we are planning another discussion in November, and we're bringing in someone from Mortgage Network, and they're going to be talking about reverse mortgages,
Yeah.
specifically really about aging in place and how to use that money to either make some repairs or renovations that the house may need, and maybe even to have some in-home care. So being
Mhm.
able to afford to stay is what we're trying to do, is provide options, and this is one of those options.
That's nice that you brought that up. I've actually coincidentally done a bunch of those for clients that their houses are, the taxes, the utility bills, everything's gone up clearly with the inflation rate, and a lot of people don't know how it works. And it is a good potential solution for a lot of people. But it's great that you're bringing those resources from an education perspective there. What are some of the other things, like kind of you paint the picture of being an entrepreneur the next 5 years? Do you have desires to like grow the footprint, kind of stay the same, or just keep the quality and the growth, which is sometimes hard to do both?
Yes, I would say yes to everything. We take it kind of one day at a time, to be honest. But when I do think about the future, the things that have always been important to me is being a resource and educating. That has really kind of been my
Your core.
my
That's
core.
the
It
core.
really has.
Yeah. Yeah.
So individually, one-on-one with clients, but also in a community setting. So yes, I would like to continue doing that. I will continue doing that. We have something called Table Talk discussion series, and we'll continue doing those small talks throughout. Right now, like I said, we're focusing on the senior age group, but we also have some great plans for people that are just graduating or people that have been in the workforce for a little bit, in kind of a prequel, if you will, to first-time home buying, because that's the other thing. You think about these kids that are graduating from school or just in the workforce right now, and how are they going to afford homes? How are they going to be able to
Mhm.
afford the down payment and to move forward? So we're going to be doing some training around that as well. So when I think about the future, I think about really providing that type of resource to people. And then as far as the brokerage itself, yeah, if people come to us, if agents come to us and they have kind of the same vision and the same goals and the same ideas, I'm fortunate right now with the group I have. We really kind of all work along the same lines, meaning clients first. Whatever's best for the client is what we do.
Same
Um,
values that you
Same
have and that
value,
you're putting right.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I
It's
think when I look for
interesting.
agents, that is what I look for. We don't have
Mhm.
to do work in the same way, but we have to kind of have the same philosophies in some ways.
Sure. Yeah, it's got to be congruent for you. We're about to wrap it up. I would like to remind all our listeners, we'd love to get your followership. If you smash that like button, subscription button, nationally syndicated, as I mentioned, great topics all across the whole platform. And um, I just want to let everybody know Christine's contact information. If you want to learn more about her expertise, you can reach her through that contact information. We'd love to have you back. I think, like I mentioned, the next 5 to 10 years, this is like the hottest topic for a lot of people because this is where most of their net worth resides, and there's a lot of movement from houses to some kind of assisted living. And we always explain in finance, people like to, like you mentioned, like to stay in their house for as long as they can, but there are a lot of good resources around assisted living or home health care and things like that.
Absolutely.
Um, Thank you so much for coming on today. And like I said, let's stay close. And if there's anything out there that you think is kind of cutting edge, I'm happy to also come and visit you on a different vantage point on reverse mortgages and finances, because that's what I do all day. And it's a big part of, like I said, people's balance sheets in terms of their houses. So it's awesome to see you, and thanks for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in a shrimp tank.